Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about how to make sure the budget for a construction project has integrity. I regularly receive questions from new developers looking to grow from buy and hold investments into new construction. The first thing I ask for is to see their budget and their pro forma. On today's show, we're going to highlight some of the most common mistakes I see in a construction budget. I understand that if you've made mistakes at the initial analysis stage, there's very little it's going to save you apart from a miraculous increase in rents. The number one mistake that I see is having an incomplete list of construction expenses. This is where you need to adopt the discipline of an airline pilot and use checklists for your budget. If you've ever flown an aircraft, you'll know that everything that happens in the cockpit uses procedures and checklists. Whenever there's a lot of items to be taken into account, the human mind is bound to miss a bunch. That's when mistakes happen. You can't blame someone for having a faulty memory because it's bound to happen. If you don't have a system, you're going to make mistakes. The key is to have a systematic way of ensuring nothing gets missed. When budget mistakes happen, they come from one of two possible sources. The first is that things are more expensive than originally estimated. This is where people expect to find cost overruns. Maybe there's a material shortage and all of a sudden prices increase higher than originally forecast. These types of mistakes can result in modest increases in your overall budget. But the biggest issue is when you have an expense that was missed from the budget altogether. You've budgeted $0 for that line item and in reality the number's not zero. That's a huge problem because the entire amount is offside, not just a misestimation of say 10%. The most important thing you can do is to make sure your list of budget line items is complete. And on today's show, I'm going to highlight 7 of the most often missed budget line items that I see in conversations with investors. Starting with number 7, title insurance. Most lenders will want a title insurance policy in their name for the construction loan. Depending on the value of the project, this can add up to a lot of money. Number 6, loan fees. Most investors remember to include the lender's origination fee, but often forget to include the cost of preparing the loan documents. That can add up anywhere from $5,000 for a simple project to $25,000 to $30,000 for a more complex set of loan documents. Some lenders also include the termination fee, and I've seen investors miss this in their budget. And when you convert from construction financing to permanent financing, there can sometimes be additional fees associated with the permanent loan. These all need to be part of the project budget. Number 5, I often see developers underestimate the cost of architectural work. The architect's fees can vary widely depending on how the front end of the project is structured. Architects sometimes hire the engineers for mechanical, structural, civil, plumbing, and electrical as subcontractors and pass through those costs to the owner. But unless you've got a proper estimate for the engineering work, you can be fooled into thinking you've got a complete quote. Number 4, site-related work. This encompasses everything from drainage to landscaping, and the number of times I've seen a project fail to include cost of removing excavated material is astounding. I've seen so many projects include the budget for the building, but fail to include any money for landscaping. And finally, I often see projects underestimate the cost associated with surface drainage. Number 3, draw inspections. When a lender loans money for construction, they advance funds in draws. And at the end of each phase of construction, the bank sends an independent third-party inspector to verify the scope of work included in the most recent draw request was in fact completed. These inspection fees can vary widely from a few $100s each to a few $1,000s, and on a large project with monthly draws, this can add up to a lot of money. Number 2, the initial operating deficit. This is when a project takes longer to lease than you planned for. Imagine it takes an extra 6 months for your property to lease up. You need to have an additional contingency fund to handle the carrying cost above and beyond your original schedule. And number 1, frankly, this one amazes me because it's so basic, but I've got to tell you, I've seen this so many times. I've seen many budgets where the borrower fails to include an interest reserve in the budget to carry the cost of the construction loan. Often if they do include a reserve, I've seen it cover the period of construction but not the leasing period. These are just a few of the common mistakes that I've seen. And the key to avoiding these mistakes is to ensure you have a comprehensive checklist for building your budget. Relying on your memory is a high-risk proposition. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.